Captain Hana sat in her command chair aboard the UES Horizon, watching the endless darkness of space through the main view screen. The night shift was usually quiet, just her and a skeleton crew monitoring the sensors while the rest of the ship slept. She liked these peaceful hours, sipping her coffee and listening to the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Then everything changed. A soft beep from the sensor station made her look up. Ensign Kim was frowning at his screen, tapping it with his finger like that might fix whatever he was seeing. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings here," Kim said, his voice uncertain. "There's something big coming in from the outer system, but it doesn't match anything in our database." Hana walked over to his station, setting her coffee cup down. The sensor display showed a massive object moving toward them, but the energy signature was unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was huge, bigger than their largest battleships, and it was moving without any visible propulsion system. "Run a full scan," she ordered, "and wake up Commander Park. I want our best people looking at this." As the sensors focused on the mysterious object, more details began to appear on screen. Hana felt her blood run cold as the familiar shape materialized. The long, sleek hull, the angular weapon ports, the distinctive black surface that seemed to absorb light itself. "No way," she whispered. "That's impossible." The Black Ship. Every human in the galaxy knew that name. 50 years ago, when humanity was just starting to explore beyond their home system, this ship had appeared without warning. It had destroyed 3 colonies and killed millions of people before Earth's combined. Fleet finally managed to stop it. The battle had cost humanity half their space navy, but they'd won. The Black Ship had been blown to pieces, its wreckage scattered across space. Yet here it was, whole and menacing as ever. But something was different this time. The original Black Ship had been terrifying enough, but this one was worse. Energy. Readings showed power levels that made their own fusion reactors look like toy batteries. Strange organic-looking growths covered parts of the hull, pulsing with an eerie light. New weapon systems jutted out from the surface, configurations that hadn't existed on the original ship. "Captain," Kim's voice was shaking now. "All are automated. Defense platforms just went offline. Every single one. They're not responding to our signals." Hana watched in horror as the massive ship glided past their defensive grid like it wasn't even there. The platforms that should have been firing everything. They had just floated silently in space, powerless. Whatever technology this ship possessed, it could shut down human systems without even trying. Commander Park rushed onto the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "What's the situation?" "The Black Ship is back," Hana said simply. "And it's not alone anymore." Through the view screen, they could see smaller ships detaching from the main vessel, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost alive. This wasn't the same enemy humanity had fought before. This was something that had learned from that defeat, something that had grown stronger and more dangerous. Hana knew with cold certainty that their previous victory hadn't been the end of the war. It had only been the beginning. Admiral Day was tending to his small garden when the emergency call came through. At 73 years old, he had traded his uniform for dirt-stained clothes and found peace among the tomato plants behind his modest house on Earth. The comm device hadn't rung in over 2 years, and he almost ignored it completely. "This better be important," he muttered, wiping soil from his hands before answering. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to General Cho, current head of Earth Defense Command. The woman looked pale, her usual composed expression replaced by barely controlled panic. "Admiral, we need you back immediately." "I'm retired, General, have been for 15 years. Find someone else." "It's back, Day. The Black Ship is back." The words hit him like a physical blow. His legs suddenly felt weak, and he had to grab the garden fence to steady himself. Memories he'd spent decades trying to forget came flooding back. The screams, over the comm channels, ships exploding around him, friends dying while he watched helplessly from his command bridge. "That's impossible," he whispered. "We destroyed it. I watched it burn. The footage is already being transmitted to your personal terminal. You need to see this." An hour later, Day sat in his study, staring at tactical displays he hadn't looked at in years. His hands trembled as he reviewed the sensor data from Captain Hana's ship. The basic shape was the same, that unmistakable predatory design that had haunted his nightmares. But everything else was wrong. The original black ship had been smooth, almost mechanical in its perfection. This new version looked like something alive. Organic growths covered sections of the hull, pulsing with a sickly green light. New weapon ports had sprouted along its surface like tumors, and the energy readings were 10 times higher than what they'd faced before. "Dear God," he breathed. "What did we do?" 3 hours later, Day stood before the Emergency Defense Council in his old dress uniform, the medals feeling heavier than he remembered. The room was packed with generals, admirals, and politicians, all looking to him for answers he wasn't. Sure he had. 50 years ago we got lucky, he began, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. The aliens underestimated us. They thought we were primitive, weak. They used the same attack patterns over and over, never adapting their strategy. We exploited that arrogance. He gestured to the holographic display showing the new black ship. This isn't the same enemy. Look at these modifications. The hull has been completely redesigned. New weapons, new defenses, new propulsion systems. This ship has learned from our previous encounter. Admiral Yoon raised her hand. How is that possible? We destroyed the original completely. Did we? Day asked grimly. We assumed we did, but what if some part of it survived? What if it transmitted data back to wherever it came from? What if they've spent 50 years analyzing our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The tactics that saved us before won't work this time, Day continued. This ship can adapt in real time. Every time we attack, it learns. Every strategy we use gets countered faster than we can implement it. President Song leaned forward. Then what do you recommend, Admiral? Day stared at the pulsing alien vessel on the display, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. I recommend we prepare for a war unlike anything we've ever fought. Dr. Min was analyzing soil samples in her lab on Research Station Alpha when the first reports came in from Kepler 442b. The agricultural world, known simply as New Eden to its 2 million inhabitants, had been humanity's greatest success story. Vast fields of genetically modified crops fed dozens of colonies across the sector. Now something was terribly wrong. "Doctor, you need to see this," her assistant June called out, his voice tight with worry. The main communication screen showed grainy footage from New Eden's surface. What should have been blue skies and golden wheat fields was now covered in a thick, crimson fog that rolled across the landscape like blood in water. The first distress calls had been normal enough. Colonist voices reporting strange weather patterns, asking for meteorological data. But as Min listened to the recordings, she noticed something disturbing. The voices were changing. Hour 1. This is Colony Base 7. We're seeing some kind of red mist moving in from the eastern farmlands. Visibility is dropping fast. Requesting immediate weather analysis. Hour 3. Base 7 reporting. The mist, it's everywhere now. People are acting strange. Some of the farmers won't come inside. They just stand in the fields, breathing it in. Hour 6. We need help. The children started singing first, then the adults joined in. It's the same song, but none of us know where it came from. Please send assistance. Hour 12. The voices had become something else entirely. Instead of panicked colonists begging for rescue, the transmissions now carried an eerie harmony. Hundreds of voices singing together in a language that didn't exist in any human database. Cut the audio, Min ordered, but she couldn't shake the melody from her mind. Even through the static-filled transmission, the alien song was hauntingly beautiful, almost hypnotic. She immediately began analyzing atmospheric samples collected by automated probes. What she found under the microscope made her step back in horror. The crimson mist wasn't just gas or particles, it was alive. Millions of microscopic machines, each smaller than a human cell, floated through the samples. They moved with purpose, seeking out organic matter and attaching themselves to it. When Min introduced human tissue samples to the mixture, the tiny machines immediately began their work. "They're rewriting everything," she whispered to herself, watching the cellular changes happen in real time. The machines didn't destroy human cells. Instead, they modified them, changing neural pathways and brain chemistry with surgical precision. Beature. Rescue ships sent to New Eden never made it to the surface. As soon as they entered the planet's atmosphere, the crew members began reporting vivid hallucinations. Pilots saw their dead relatives waving from the ground below. Soldiers heard their children calling for help. Every person experienced something different, but the result was always the same: an overwhelming urge to land and join the voices below. Captain Lee was commanding the rescue fleet when his navigator suddenly changed course toward the planet's surface. "What are you doing?" Lee shouted. "Return to your station." "Can't you hear them?" the navigator replied, tears streaming down his face. "They're singing our song, the song we've been waiting our whole lives to learn." Min watched helplessly from her research station as ship after ship descended into the crimson fog. The last transmission from the surface came 18 hours after the mist first appeared. 2 million voices singing in perfect harmony, no longer human but not quite alien either. Something new had been born on New Eden, and it was spreading beyond the planet's atmosphere. Long-range sensors detected similar crimson clouds forming around 3 other agricultural worlds. The harvest had begun, but humanity wasn't gathering crops. They were becoming something else entirely. Commander Wu had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night studying alien technology had led to this battle. Now standing on the bridge of the UES Defiance with humanity's largest battle fleet at his command, he felt ready to avenge New Eden. "All ships, this is Commander Wu. Target the black ship's main hull. Fire everything we have." The space around. The alien vessel erupted in brilliant flashes as dozens of human warships unleashed their fury. Plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid belts fired in perfect coordination. Nuclear torpedoes, each one powerful enough to destroy a city, streaked toward their target, trailing fire. For a moment, Wu allowed himself to hope. The barrage was magnificent, a display of human military power that should have reduced any enemy to scrap metal. Then the light faded and the black ship remained untouched. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Park from the weapons station. "Direct hits on all targets. The energy readings show massive impact, but there's no damage." Wu stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where their plasma bolts had struck, the alien hull, the metal seemed to shimmer and change color. Instead of burn marks and craters, the surface now showed new patterns, like scales or armor plates that hadn't been there before. "Fire again," he ordered. "Full spread, maximum power." The second volley was even more concentrated than the first. Every ship in the fleet targeted the same section of hull, focusing their combined firepower on a single point. The space around, the black ship turned white-hot with energy. When the light cleared, that section of the alien vessel had become mirror-bright, reflecting the humans' own weapon signatures back at them. "Sir," called out Ensign Kim from the sensor station, his voice shaking, "the ship it's learning. Each time we hit it, the hull adapts. It's becoming resistant to our weapons." As if to prove the point, the black ship began to glow. Weapons, say. Ports along its surface opened, revealing cannons that looked disturbingly familiar. When they fired, Wu recognized the energy signatures immediately. "Those are our plasma cannons," he breathed. "It's copied our own weapons." The alien vessel's counterattack was devastating. Human plasma fire, perfected and improved, tore through the fleet's shields like paper. The battleship Courage exploded. In a ball of fire, the cruiser Victory broke in half, its crew screaming over the comm channels before the signal cut to static. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Wu shouted, but it was too late for many of his vessels. Worse was yet to come. As the battle raged, the black ship began to change shape. Its hull rippled like liquid metal, and suddenly smaller craft began emerging from its surface. These weren't the mechanical fighters humans were used to seeing. They moved like living creatures, flowing through space with organic grace. Each new fighter was different from the last. The first wave attacked with standard energy weapons, easily countered by human defenses. But when they were destroyed, the second wave emerged with improved shields and better maneuvers. The third wave had adaptive armor. The fourth wave seemed to predict every human tactical move before it happened. "They're evolving," Wu realized with growing horror. "Each generation learns from the previous one. Every time we destroy them, they come back stronger." Lieutenant Park looked up from his console, face pale. "Sir, I'm counting over 200 enemy fighters now, and more are launching every minute. Each batch is more advanced than the last." Wu watched his carefully planned battle turn into a nightmare. His fleet, once the pride of human military might, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that improved with every exchange of fire. The black ship wasn't just fighting them, it was learning to become them, only better. "Fall back," he ordered reluctantly. "All ships, retreat, to minimum safe distance." As his battered fleet limped away, Wu stared at the alien vessel with a mixture of fear and unwilling admiration. They hadn't just lost a battle, they had taught their enemy how to win the war. Dr. Sol had always been considered the weird one at the research facility. While other engineers worked on bigger guns and stronger shields, she spent her time studying fragments from the original black ship that had been stored in deep freeze for 50 years. Her lab looked more like an artist's studio than a military research center, with paintings covering the walls and classical music playing softly in the background. "You're wasting your time with that junk," her colleague Dr. Han would say whenever he passed her lab. "We need weapons, not abstract art." But Sol knew something others didn't. She had discovered a pattern in the alien technology that everyone else had missed. The black ship fragments were perfect. Every joint, every circuit, every piece of metal had been crafted with mathematical precision. There were no flaws, no random elements, no happy accidents. Everything followed logical rules and predictable patterns. "That's their weakness," she muttered to herself, staring at a piece of alien hull under her microscope. "They can't handle chaos because they don't understand." Its soul had grown up in a family of musicians and artists. Her mother was a jazz pianist who could improvise for hours without repeating a single melody. Her father painted abstract works that seemed random, but somehow made perfect sense. Sul had learned early that the most beautiful things in life couldn't be calculated or predicted. She started small running computer simulations of weapons that operated on random principles. Instead of following targeting algorithms, missiles would change course based on random number generators. Instead of firing in predictable patterns, cannons would shoot whenever a coin flip came up heads. The results were promising. In every simulation, the adaptive alien technology struggled to counter attacks that had no logical pattern. How could you defend against something that even the attacker couldn't predict? But Sul needed more than random numbers. She needed true chaos, the kind that only humans could create. She sent out an unusual request through the research facility's bulletin board, seeking artists, musicians, and creative types for top-secret military project. No prior weapons experience necessary. Most of her colleagues thought she had lost her mind. Who would bring painters and musicians into a weapons lab? The team that assembled was unlike anything the military had ever seen. Yuki was a street artist who specialized in graffiti that changed meaning depending on the viewer's angle. Tae was a jazz drummer who could keep 3 different rhythms going at the same time. May created sculptures that looked different every time you looked at them. "I need you to teach our weapons how to be unpredictable," Sul told them at their first meeting. "Not random, that's just mathematics. I need them to be creative." Working together, they developed something extraordinary. Missiles that changed targets based on musical compositions, switching between enemies, following the rhythm of Beethoven's symphonies. Defense systems that activated based on color patterns from famous paintings. Fighter ships that moved using dance choreography instead of military formations. The weapons looked insane on paper. Military commanders shook their heads when they saw the blueprints. How could a missile guided by jazz improvisation possibly be effective in combat? Sol knew better. She had tested prototypes against simulated alien technology, and the results were incredible. The adaptive systems couldn't figure out how to counter attacks based on human creativity. They tried to find patterns in Picasso's brushstrokes and failed. They attempted to predict the next note in a John Coltrane solo and gave up in confusion. "Creativity isn't logical," Sul explained to the skeptical military board. "It comes from emotion, from inspiration, from pure human imagination. The aliens can copy our technology, but they can't copy our souls." General Cho studied the test results with growing amazement. "This is either brilliant or completely insane." In this case, Sewell smiled, those might be the same thing. The first production models rolled out of the factory a week later, each one designed by artists and built by engineers. They looked beautiful and deadly at the same time, like sculptures that happened to be weapons. Humanity was about to fight its strangest war ever. Captain Jun stared at his new flight manual with complete confusion. Instead of tactical diagrams and weapon specifications, he found pages covered with colorful splotches, musical notes, and what looked like a child's artwork. "This has to be a joke," he muttered, flipping through the bizarre instructions. His fighter's computer now had settings labeled bebop mode, abstract formation, and finger paint navigation. Around him, the human fleet prepared for the strangest battle in military history. Ships that once moved in precise formations now drifted in seemingly random patterns. Weapons that used to fire in calculated volleys were now synced to classical. Music playing over the comm channels. "All ships, this is Admiral Day," came the voice over the radio. "I know this looks crazy, but trust Dr. Saul's plan. Let your creativity flow. Don't think too hard about what you're doing." The black ship hung in space before them, as menacing as ever. Its hull still showed the adaptive improvements from their last encounter, gleaming with stolen human technology. Smaller fighter craft swarmed around it like angry insects, each one more advanced than the ones before. "Engage," Day commanded. What happened next defied every rule of space combat ever written. The human flagship began moving to the rhythm of a jazz saxophone, weaving between enemy fire like a dancer on a stage. Its main guns fired not when targets were perfectly aligned, but when the music reached crescendos and dramatic pauses. Captain Jun found himself following his new instructions, letting his fighter drift according to the finger painting pattern displayed on his screen. The movements felt wrong to his military training, but somehow they worked. Enemy fighters that should have easily predicted his course found themselves shooting at empty space. "This is insane," his wingman Lee called out over the comm. "I'm flying like my 5-year-old daughter draws pictures, and it's actually working." The black ship's adaptive systems, designed to learn from logical patterns, struggled desperately to understand the human attack. They analyzed the jazz rhythms, trying to find mathematical formulas in improvised solos. They attempted to predict the next brushstroke in abstract paintings that had no plan or structure. For the first time in the war, the alien vessel seemed confused. Commander Wu, piloting the destroyer Harmony, executed a maneuver inspired by modern dance. His ship spun and twisted through space, firing missiles that changed targets mid-flight based on the emotional peaks in Tchaikovsky's compositions. The alien fighters couldn't adapt fast enough to counterattacks that were guided by pure feeling rather than logic. "Target the main hull," Jun called out, his fighter now moving in patterns based on his daughter's crayon drawings. "Follow the yellow swirls, just like the art says." A dozen human fighters dove toward the black ship, their flight paths looking like abstract art come to life. The alien point defense systems fired frantically, but they couldn't predict movements based on creative inspiration rather than tactical thinking. Jun's missile, guided by the chaotic beauty of finger painting, slipped through the defensive grid and struck the black ship's hull directly. The explosion sent shockwaves through both fleets. For the first time since the war began, the alien vessel showed actual damage. A section of its perfect hull was scarred and blackened, and the organic growths around the impact site withered and died. "We hurt it," someone shouted over the comm. "The crazy weapons actually hurt it." The black ship's response was immediate and violent. It began firing everything it had, but even its counterattack seemed desperate now, lacking the calculated precision it had shown before. "Keep it up," Admiral Day commanded. "Stay unpredictable. Let the music guide you." The battle raged on, but for the first time humanity had hope. Their enemy could copy human technology, but it couldn't copy the human spirit. Logic could be analyzed and countered, but creativity came from somewhere deeper, somewhere the aliens couldn't reach. The impossible war had truly begun. The black ship was dying, and it knew it. Admiral Day watched from his flagship's bridge as the alien vessel tried desperately to adapt to humanity's creative chaos. Its hull rippled and changed, growing new defensive patterns, but nothing worked. How could it defend against weapons guided by jazz solos and abstract art? How could it predict attacks based on human emotion? Sir, the enemy vessel is changing. Course Iter reported Lieutenant Nam from the navigation station. It's running away. For 50 years, Day had dreamed of seeing the black ship retreat. But now that the moment had arrived, he felt no satisfaction. Something was wrong. The alien vessel wasn't fleeing in panic. It was moving with purpose, heading toward the edge of the solar system. It's not running, Day realized with growing horror. It's trying to escape to warn the others. Through his tactical display, he could see the ship's hull beginning to glow with the same energy signature they'd detected during its arrival. Whatever technology allowed it to travel between star systems was powering up. In minutes, maybe less, it would disappear into deep space. All ships concentrate fire on the engine section, Day commanded. Don't let it jump away. The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles guided by children's drawings and cannons firing to classical music, all focused on the black ship's rear sections. But even damaged, the alien vessel's defenses held. Its hull continued to adapt, and the glowing energy field grew brighter. Day closed his eyes, and suddenly he was 8 years old again, sitting in his grandmother's kitchen while she made dumplings for dinner. She had flour on her hands and a smile on her face, and when he tried to help, she laughed, not at him, but with pure joy at his clumsy attempts. That laugh had been the most beautiful sound in his childhood world. He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Young faces, scared but determined. They reminded him of his granddaughter, who was probably in school right now, learning about art and music and all the wonderful chaotic things that made humans special. Lieutenant Nam, set a collision course for the alien vessel, he said quietly. Sir? Nam's voice cracked with shock. You heard me. Ram speed, target their central core. Admiral, that's suicide, Commander Park protested. There has to be another way. Day smiled, thinking of his grandmother's laughter. There is no other way. But I'm not going to navigate this ship using any computer or tactical system. I'm going to fly it using my memories. The crew stared at him in confusion, but Day was already taking manual control of the ship. He closed his eyes again, letting his grandmother's laughter guide his hands on the controls. Not the memory of the sound, but the feeling it gave him. Pure, illogical human joy. The flagship accelerated toward the black ship, following a flight path that made no sense to any tactical computer. It wove and danced through space, guided by laughter from decades past, by the way his wife hummed while doing dishes, by his daughter's first steps, by every moment of happiness he'd ever experienced. The alien point defense systems fired frantically, but they couldn't predict a course based on love and memory. The adaptive technology that had learned to counter human weapons was helpless against human emotion. All ships, stay back, Day transmitted to the fleet. This is Admiral Day's final order. Tell them we won. The flagship struck, the black ship's core at full speed. The explosion lit up the entire system, visible from planets billions of kilometers away. Both vessels disintegrated instantly, scattered into countless pieces of burning metal. But in its final moments, the black ship released one last weapon. Millions of microscopic seeds, each smaller than a speck of dust, spread out from the wreckage like dandelion seeds on the wind. They drifted silently through space, seeking new worlds to infect. Day's final transmission, sent just seconds before impact, carried across the solar system. We won this battle, but the war isn't over. The seeds are spreading. Watch for the signs. Stay human. Stay creative. Don't let them change us into something we're not. The greatest victory in human history had come at a terrible price. Dr. Min was reviewing crop reports when the first strange images arrived. Farmers across 12 different colonies had sent photographs that made no sense. Wheat fields that should have grown in neat rows were instead forming perfect circles and spirals. Corn stalks arranged themselves into mathematical patterns that looked like alien writing. This has to be some kind of joke, she muttered, comparing images from worlds light years apart. But the patterns were identical down to the smallest detail. Then came the reports about the children. Teachers on Mars. Colony sent footage of their students drawing pictures during art class. Every child, regardless of age, was creating the same symbols, flowing lines that seemed to move on the paper, geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly, and faces that looked almost human but not quite. "We didn't teach them this," insisted Mrs. Yang, a kindergarten teacher with 20 years of experience. "They just started drawing these things on their own. When I ask them what the pictures mean, they say they're drawing their dreams." Dr. Min felt a chill run down her spine. The microscopic seeds from the black ship's destruction had spread throughout the solar system, carried by solar winds to every inhabited world. She had assumed they were dormant, waiting to activate some terrible weapon. But what if they were already working? She began collecting samples, soil from the geometric crop fields, drawings from the children, even water from wells near the affected areas. Under her microscope, she found the same tiny machines that had transformed the colonists on New Eden, but these were different somehow, more subtle in their approach. The machines weren't forcing changes on people. They were offering them. "It's like they're showing us possibilities," she explained to her research team. "The seeds aren't weapons, they're invitations to become something more than human." The first voluntary transformations began on Europa Station. Dr. Kim, a physicist, studying the seed phenomena, announced that he was going to allow the microscopic machines to alter his brain chemistry. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. "You don't understand," Kim told them before the procedure. "I can see the equations now, the mathematics that govern everything. Pure human minds can only comprehend a tiny fraction of the universe. But with their help, I could see it all." The transformation took 3 days. When it was complete, Kim looked the same on the outside, but his eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before. He spoke in normal human language, but somehow conveyed ideas that pure humans couldn't quite grasp. "It's beautiful," he said, tears streaming down his face. "The universe is so much more incredible than we ever imagined. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to help us evolve." More people began volunteering for the change. Scientists who wanted to understand cosmic mysteries beyond human comprehension. Artists who glimpsed impossible colors in their dreams. Musicians who heard harmonies that normal ears couldn't detect. But not everyone was convinced. "They're not human anymore," argued Captain Yoon, leader of the purity movement that had formed to resist the transformations. "Look at their eyes. Listen to how they talk. Whatever they've become, it's not us." The changed humans tried to explain what they experienced, but their words fell short. How could you describe seeing in 11 dimensions to someone who only knew 3? How could you explain music that existed in mathematical space rather than sound waves? "We're still human," insisted Dr. Kim. "We're just more human. We can think thoughts that pure humans can't think, feel emotions that pure humans can't feel. We're what humanity could become if we stopped limiting ourselves." Dr. Min found herself caught in the middle, watching as humanity slowly split into 2 groups. The changed ones spoke of transcendence and evolution, of joining a galactic community of evolved beings. The unchanged ones spoke of invasion and loss of identity, of humanity being erased from existence. Both sides claimed to be fighting for humanity's future. "The question isn't whether the changes are good or bad," Min wrote in her final report. "The question is whether we're still human if we accept them, or whether humanity itself needs to evolve to survive in a universe full of beings far more advanced than us." The seeds continued to spread, and more people faced the choice every day. President Yun stood at the window of her office, looking out at the earth below. 6 months ago, the view had been familiar. Cities with their geometric patterns, farmlands in neat squares, everything organized the way humans had always done things. Now, even from orbit, she could see the changes spreading across the planets. Surface crop circles weren't circles anymore. They were complex patterns that seemed to shift and breathe when viewed from above. Cities had begun reorganizing themselves, with the changed humans creating new architectural styles that somehow made more sense than traditional buildings, even though she couldn't explain why. "Madam President," her aide June entered quietly. "The daily briefing is ready." The numbers were staggering. Over 40% of Earth's population had voluntarily undergone the transformation. On some colonies, the percentage was even higher. Scientists, artists, and philosophers were the most likely to change, drawn by promises of expanded consciousness and deeper understanding of the universe. But the unchanged humans weren't standing still either. They had formed communities dedicated to preserving pure humanity, complete with genetic testing to ensure no microscopic machines had infected their bodies. Some colonies had banned the changed humans entirely, viewing them as a threat to human identity. "What's the latest from the medical teams?" Yun asked. "The changed humans show no signs of aggression or mental illness," Jun replied, reading from his tablet. "If anything, they seem more peaceful than before, but they're becoming increasingly difficult to understand. Yesterday, Dr. Kim tried to explain his research to the Science Council. Half the pure humans in the room said his words made no sense, even though he was speaking perfect Korean. That was the real problem. The changed humans weren't becoming aliens. They were becoming something humanity couldn't comprehend. They still looked human, still claimed to feel human emotions, but they operated on levels of thought that pure humans couldn't access." Yun's own daughter had chosen to transform 3 weeks ago. She was a brilliant musician who said she could now hear the music between the notes and compose symphonies that existed in mathematical dimensions rather than sound waves. When she played her new compositions, the changed humans wept with joy while the unchanged ones heard only noise. "Ma'am," Jun continued hesitantly, "there's something else. Our deep space monitors have detected new arrivals." Yun turned from the window, her heart racing. "More black ships?" "Yes, but they're different. They're not attacking or threatening. They're just waiting at the edge of the solar system like they're observing." Through the communication networks, the changed humans had begun receiving messages from these new ships. Not words or images, but direct thoughts and concepts that pure humans couldn't interpret. The changed ones described them as teachers and guides who had come to help humanity take its next evolutionary step. The unchanged humans saw them as proof that the transformation was an invasion by disguise. "We have to make a decision," Yun said quietly. "Do we ban the transformations and fight to keep humanity as it is, or do we accept that this might be the natural next step in human evolution?" Her advisors had been arguing about this for weeks. General Park wanted to use military force to stop the transformations, viewing them as a foreign attack on human identity. Dr. Lee, who had remained unchanged herself, argued that they should study the phenomenon longer before making any permanent decisions. But time was running out. The changed humans were already having children, and those children showed capabilities that pure humans couldn't match. Within a generation, Earth would host 2 completely different species, both calling themselves human. "Schedule a global broadcast," Yun decided. "It's time to let every person on Earth make their own choice." That evening, President Yun addressed the world for what might be the last time as leader of a unified humanity. "We stand at a crossroads," she began. "We can choose to remain as we are, preserving human nature as we've always known it. Or we can choose to evolve, to become something greater than what we are now. Both paths have value. Both paths lead to different futures." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "I cannot make this choice for you. No government can. This is a decision that every human being must make for themselves and their families. Choose wisely, but choose freely." Outside her window, the stars seemed brighter than usual, and Yun wondered if that was just her imagination, or if the universe itself was changing.